numbers. As per a study conducted by one of the organizations where I chair their advisory board on urban capacity building, we found out that for 100,000 population, if we compare with some of the best class cities, Bangalore, which is an important city, we have about 210 persons per 100,000 people. Delhi has 1130. Mumbai has about 833, whereas London has 2,755 persons per 100,000 population, and New York has close to 4,000. The other issue as regards the numbers in employ of the metropolitan areas is the what in army language called teeth to tail ratio, the top management and the bottom. In most of these metropolitan areas, Group A constitutes about 1% of the total employees. Group B, which is the second tier, is about 2%. Group C, which is the clerical staff, the staff which supports the organization mostly, is 23%, and the lowest, class 4 employees, constitute 74%. So that much for the capacity of the metropolitan areas to be able to discharge their functions. However, having said that, and having had the experience of seeing the rollout of the Jawaharlal Nehru Urban Renewal Mission, which was really a strategy for renewal of the urban areas, and some 65 cities had been identified, where we did manage to disburse the funds, but the strategy, at the heart of which was the requirement for implementation of reforms. The idea was to unlock the land market from all kinds of restrictions. The idea was to improve the financial credibility of the municipal bodies so that they could access market capital and become sustainable. That has not worked. So my recommendation at this stage, in my view, what needs to be done is to restructure the whole concept of urban renewal mission and have one bucket for those states and cities which are willing to create proper structures, devolve and delegate powers and resources to give them reasonable autonomy. The thing is, since we have not done this, since these provisions have not been made when the third tier of democracy was created, in the present context of very tenuous, difficult coalition governments, it may not be politically feasible to correct the situation and try and bring about proper structures and other things for the municipal bodies, including the metropolitan governments. Let us try and incentivize through the fiscal dole-out that we give this money to one bucket, and possibly another bucket to be politically correct and give it to those who are not willing or who do not have the capacity to undertake this reform. Otherwise, I think if we keep soft-pedaling this issue, we'll keep giving funds only for capital injection at one time, but there will be no sustainable assets. The other opportunity has been provided by Article 243Y incorporated in the Constitution at the time of creating the local bodies, where the state finance commissions were created as a body to recommend the flow of funds, devolution of funds from the state governments to the local bodies. And read with Article 283C, where the Finance Commission of India is set up, they give the recommendations as regards the additional flow of funds to the states to be distributed in turn to the municipalities on the recommendations of state finance commissions. I think in this manner, 11th Finance Commission gave about 2,000 crores, 12th Finance Commission gave 5,000 crores, and the 13th Finance Commission tripled that amount and gave about 15,000 crores. The important step taken by the 13th Finance Commission was that it gave 1.93%, which is about close to 2% of the central divisible pool of for the third tier, thus establishing this link between the central funds which could be allocated to the third tier. Now, the recommendations of the Finance Commission could be, but the difficulty in implementing the State Finance Commission's recommendations has been that their credibility is poor, they don't come in time, they do not synchronize the periods for which they have been asking for funds, recommending funds, and the period for which the National Finance Commission works. So I think it would be a good idea to establish a part of the Finance Commission recommendations to the states which are willing to create proper, credible standing state finance commissions. In that fashion, we could probably give the meritorious states where they are serious to get this money and utilize it. Why I am insisting that we have to make a distinction between those states which are... sorry?
Maybe
I'm just finishing. Yeah. I'm just finishing. So having said that, the idea is that we should be able to make a distinction between those states which are willing to follow a discipline where you spend money and create sustainable assets and not end up using just for one-time capital injection. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we have Mr. Ravichandar, Chairman of Feedback Business Consulting.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Ishar, for having me. In fact, I was wondering, what am I doing here? Because as I was telling Dr. Linn and Professor Bahl, I'm neither an academic nor an urban practitioner. In fact, the best way to describe myself in this space in the current context would be an accidental urban journeyman. That's what really I have been. It's really been a pro bono involvement in this space since 2000, starting with the Bangalore Agenda Task Force. And what I've tried to put together is 8 or 10 things that one has noticed, and I'll try to go at 1 minute a point, on the things that one has been involved in. Actually, my first foray was in trying to raise resources. And the Bangalore's property tax system self-assessment, I was one of the people working along with Vasanth Rao to make that happen. To me, the main takeaway of that property tax, because really the task was how do you raise the revenues, and our learning from the Bangalore self-assessment scheme really was, the property tax in 2000 was 118 crores. We're talking about 2,000, 2,500 crores now. So it's gone up by about 14, 15x in 14 years without a revolt on the ground. And the key takeaway really was, if you design a property tax system which trusts the citizen to tell the truth, then expecting a revenue officer to uncover a lie, there are greater chances that you'll have the buoyancy of revenues and less corruption, etc., that actually works. And the interesting thing really is there's still a lot of headspace for property tax to grow. I mean, 25% of Bangalore's properties are still not in the net. So the thing that one thinks about as you think about this issue, Karnataka has been a pioneer in rural bhumi, tight land records for farmers. Maybe there's a time has come to do an urban bhumi, where you have urban land records in much better shape, digitize them as the base to really look after this whole property tax area. The other thing, of course, is the reluctance of corporations and municipalities to raise taxes from time to time. So maybe index it to inflation at some percentage of inflation and make that non-discretionary so that the city councillors don't necessarily have to take that decision. Another thing that we were involved in those days, there's a colleague, Ramesh Ramanathan, who did a lot of work on that, was this whole area. We said, okay, we'll go and raise this money for Bangalore City Corporation, but there's a huge trust deficit. How do we build trust that there is visibility of how the money, where does the money come from and where does the money get spent? And that was the genesis of the idea of a fund-based accounting system back in 2000. We said money may be still badly spent, but at least we will know where it was badly spent. That was the basic idea. So we did this fund-based accounting, and we thought we were very smart. We did an MOU between the state government and the corporation, which essentially said the following. The state said, we will do the legislation for user charges and other things that you need. I will give you the state transfers of money that I promise, but you in return will be fiscally responsible and you will do fund-based accounting system. And we thought we had tied all the loose ends. So the heart of the fund-based accounting system was you could aggregate at the, disaggregate at the lowest level, whether it be lamps or garbage or whatever, and really get a sense of where the money is being spent. And we brought this whole job code system, and it worked very well for 1 year. But the learning then was, by year 2, the system struck back. So they came up with this whole idea, all this is fine to disaggregate, but we actually need to give combined contracts in an area which covers electricity, garbage, roads, everything together. And they created a job code called 0000, which killed the whole fund-based accounting system. So the learning really there was that eternal vigilance is required in this space, and even that is often not enough. The third part really was a bunch of four of us who came to Delhi after the BATF under the leadership of Nandan then, saying, hey, we understand what needs to be done in urban, which became the genesis to catalyze what is now known as the JNNURM. And I remember our first meeting when we went to the Planning Commission. They said, hello, you come to the wrong place. We are the central government, and you should be going to the 26 odd state governments to discuss your findings. We came with some 30 slides and 100 pages of what needs to be done. But we persisted. And basically, the other learning here really is that we have such a flawed system where the third tier has not been empowered, and consequently, the federal government has a major responsibility, even in the city space, for cities to find their own destiny. Even in the recent election where Nandan stood for a thing, Nandan in 2 months of campaigning kept talking about local issues. And actually his rival said, are you fighting a corporator election or are you fighting a Lok Sabha election? Shouldn't you be talking current account deficit? But the reality is that, again, going back to the flawed system that we have got, every elected rep finally faces local issues, and that's really the battle that needs to be fought. The other thing, of course, one of the parties is talking in terms of 100 new cities, but I personally think, as someone who's been working in the space for 14 years, our bigger challenge is to retrofit existing cities. 100 new cities are welcome, but unless we crack the retrofitting issue, we are not going to make significant headway. That brings me really to this whole issue of decentralization and the governance structure. We all keep talking about it, but directly elected mayors is not happening. And there is no way it's going to happen with the stranglehold that the state has got on the system. So then we try to come out with these semi-creations called the MPC and other things. And let me just share with you what's happening in Karnataka as we speak. Civil society activists went to court to get the MPC to happen. Like a root canal job, last December, finally the state government said, okay, they notified an MPC. But the state budget that came out in February this year did not have a 1 rupee allocation for the MPC or the idea of the MPC. That was how seriously they took it. And then they set up a vision group, again having very eminent people, saying the state is setting up a vision group for the future of Bangalore. The civil activists have gone to court saying we have no problem with the vision group, but anchor it with the MPC, not with the state government. And the court has stayed the vision group, and the next hearing is 2 months from now. But the point really that I'm trying to make in this whole decentralization story is that you've got to keep on struggling to make this happen, because the state is not going to make it happen on their own. An out-of-box idea that one has had in this space is the only way I feel we'll get the more empowered third tier is we need to work on a bipartisan consensus among the younger generation of politicians across political parties. Barring the odd example of UP where a young person became a chief minister, our politics is still geriatric. So if the children of political families who are interested in politics can convince their parents across political parties that the city is a good space to start my internship, we have a better chance of this third tier getting empowered than all the stuff that we've been trying over the years. So that's another out-of-box thought out there. Moving on to this whole metropolitan, as Mr. Baijal said, there are definitions on 1 million, 10 million. From the numbers, I realize we'll be one of the 27 cities in Bangalore for sure. We're already at 9.5 million. The thing that really happens when you deal with chief ministers and find, for example, we have a chief minister who really doesn't care too much about Bangalore. His interest is, he says, people need to go elsewhere. And you wonder, who does he have in mind? Because the guys who are there, including himself, are not going anywhere. So how is that going to happen? So the challenge now really is, but they're interested. So I really believe that while we do and talk this metropolitan, regional and stuff like that, we have to move towards a larger idea of the region as the new city. So a state like Karnataka, as an example, could maybe have 5 regions. Each region would have an anchor city. So it could be Bangalore, Mysore, Mangalore, Hubli, Dharwad, whatever. And around that, you have about 6 to 8 nodes, which are live and work nodes, which are built around economic competitiveness. And the